Hello and welcome to our project raising on TogetherTec. Project raisings, we get together and concentrate on one particular project, this one being our project, so that's a little different. But we have the project holder give us the aspirations that they would most like to get out of the hour, and then we brainstorm to the best of our ability how to fulfill those aspirations. And then it's on the project holder to actually follow through with them. It's a little different. Adriel's going to play the project holder, even though we all are into the meta project. So Adriel, if you can explain a bit what TogetherTec is, what the meta project of projects is, and then what the aspirations are for today. And then maybe Bentley and I can add some if we want.
Sure, sounds good. And unlike other sessions, if I miss something in the description, feel free to chime in because that's actually an option here. So TogetherTec is commonly called GameB Projects in Facebook, and on YouTube it is called TogetherTec. We have also called it the Meta Project, if you hear us talking about that in other videos. And we call it the Meta Project because it's a project about projects. So for example, I've got Wiki Election, Bentley has Recent Score. I think Jubilee considers Idea Cafe sort of your project, right?
Solution raising at the moment, but Idea Cafe also.
And the idea is that while there's unique parts to each project, there's also a lot of commonality, especially when you get into apps that have a lot of sort of a similar approach, like Wiki Election and Recent Score, where it's kind of the sense making and trying to figure stuff out. And there's elements that will need to be shared across projects. Things like trust. That was a big example for me, where it's trying to figure out what does trust mean to the public and how does an organization sort of garner trust and keep it and not damage its reputation. And any research around that can be usable by anyone else who with a project. And then as well, all the sort of more boring stuff that I think project owners don't typically get too excited about working on, like the marketing parts and the writing the copy and all that. The same sort of thing that, again, not all project owners will have, and the ones that don't have, how can we sort of help supplement each other's skills? And how, as a group, how can we say, oh, I figured out how to solve a certain problem that I think all of these projects, or at least a lot of them will end up having. That will end up being a lot of different things. And that's part of what we'll get into here is maybe I'm sure there will end up being some things that were like, that sounds great, probably not the MVP. So the aspiration, since that's, I guess, where I'm headed, is to figure out what the MVP or the minimum viable product is for TogetherTec. So if like as a tech solution, as an app online, let's say, it's togethertec.com, what does that look like? What is it actually offering people who have projects? And what is it offering people who don't have projects but are interested in helping with existing projects, and anything else that is necessary in that kind of an ecosystem. Is that a good enough intro? Is that encapsulated?
I think so. Yeah, and it's a good aspiration. We're looking for the MVP, and so we can just keep bringing it back to that aspiration when I'm like coming up with my $1 billion ideas. MVP.
Right. Well,
MVP.
And the nice thing about the MVP and this conversation, because they always end up with okay, that's great, but not MVP, is, of course, we're recording it, so it's easy to go back, but it's meant as you can also sort of build out the roadmap. You can say, oh, that's an awesome feature that we didn't think about until now, probably not MVP, but we definitely want it. And just, I guess, a little bit of context, this is coming about because I'm in the process of writing up the specs for Wiki Election to get sort of an MVP coded during the COVID-19 lockdown. And I figured like my review of sort of the two apps of what Wiki Election, at least the MVP, might look like, and TogetherTec, there's a lot of similarities, and they're sort of like, not with how the actual end database is designed, but all of your basic stuff, right? Like registering a user and displaying information on a page and certain things. So the goal is I sort of want to create like an early version of something like that is neither TogetherTec or Wiki Election to sort of get an idea for how much it costs, and then build it out to the point where it's got all the features that are shared between Wiki Election and TogetherTec, and then I would split it off and say, here's the Wiki Election version, and actually building out that database, and then also use that code split to now start building TogetherTec. So that's sort of where this came from, is we'll be building the first part just as a part of wiki election, and then sort of copying and pasting that and starting a project for TogetherTec based on what that project is at that point in time, if that makes sense.
But my mic was muted. I would like to just mention that we right now have been trying our minimum viable product, which is the Facebook group itself.
Right.
And it is not working as well as I would have liked as far as people participating, putting up their videos, commenting, offering suggestions, coming to the solution raisings, coming to the idea cafes on our projects. And I don't know if we want to spend any time brainstorming how to improve that, or you only want to spend time looking at like creating our own tech and what that would look like.
I guess what I would suggest is that we talk about go back kind of to first principles. What do we need in our projects, and how do we want to go about doing that? Rather than, I think there's a temptation to think about what we think the community needs. So I'd like to hear from you guys what y'all need in your projects.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the three of us will be able to give a pretty good insight into what people who have projects might want out of something like TogetherTec. The part that we don't have, that we'll take a stab at because we're the only ones here, is what somebody who doesn't have a project but might want to help with the project, what we feel that they might want. Because that's sort of our two main groups that would be using an app like this. And then I guess theoretically, on that same vein, how project owners can help each other, which kind of ends up becoming the same thing of somebody helping with a project that's not theirs, whether or not you have a project.
I think we can actually, because we're both project holders for our own project, but we're also potential participants in each other's projects, as we know. And so can like take and put on the hats, right? Like what would get, if I'm asking a question about solution raising, what would get you to do what I'm asking versus, you know, for TogetherTec? Because for solution raising, I have the same like problem as our Facebook group. It's only a Facebook group at the moment. And then I'm scheduling calls. There's a spreadsheet, but no one's filling it out. So then I get 7 people on a call that I think there's 1 person on. And how to actually deal with that without people coming and participating in the why aren't you participating, right? And what would get you to participate? What would give you the most value? And so my issue with solution raising is basically our issue with TogetherTec of like, this is only as powerful as the people who show up and participate. And then figuring out the next piece from there. And then having people, the individuals, feeling like they have both, like that their voice matters, that their ideas matter, that like this is a space. This isn't about it being just mine. It is about you can create your own solution raising. It doesn't have to be on my schedule. What would get you to participate in the ones I have, right? Like what is creating the communication that isn't hierarchical down? It's not I'm in charge and I'm running everything. It's how do you offer your solutions in a way that we can all yes and right? And the ones that absolutely won't work, maybe not now.
Sounds good. I think on the note, you had mentioned something about like, should we talk about the Facebook group and trying to do it in Facebook and sort of the issues with that? And I think that is when we touch on that, because I agree that we should, that sort of becomes a what does Facebook give us? And you know, where can we find an MVP feature in there? And then also, what is it not doing that maybe we can say from the get-go, we want to make sure that it does this. And that is one of the benefits of the MVP is it's now a completely separate thing that we can have our control over, trying to figure out, you know, how do we actually get people involved? How do we make sure that if we put a message, if somebody does something, that the appropriate people are informed? Because that's part of the issue of Facebook is just the torrent of information that comes at you. And of course, they just don't show you everything unless somebody wants to pay to post. That's kind of intentional on their part. So
there are 2 things I think we can be doing for the TogetherTec Facebook, and I can take these for solution raising. One of which is just like we've said many times, talking about the algorithm and like comment and talk like things that you want. Here's how you help it grow, right? But also in the GameB admin group, because we have our own GameB admin group for having conversations, but there's only 11 of us, so it never is going to reach the algorithm. Having an actually explicit, if this group is important to you and you want to see these things over whatever else is in your news feed, turn on notifications to all, right? And so that will bring it up for the importance of you, if it is important to you. And then also for that post in particular, do the comments and stuff so everyone sees this, so they know to do it. And maybe even just saying, no, this project isn't as important to me. I actually more want to see my high school friends' updates, right? Or like, what is just having the comments and the conversation, having the likes, and then also just explaining how to turn on the notifications.
Right. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think that's definitely a good thing to make sure that we are taking as full advantage of, I guess what I'd call like the prototype as we can. So if it's doing things like, hey, let's actually turn on the notifications so that we can get more people actually showing up to the sessions and seeing the posts, I think that makes a lot of sense.
And then, sorry, the other thing also I've been doing is like when I post the one with the StreamYard link, I go back in and edit it to put the actual link, or I delete it if I've already done that twice, so that it's not a bunch of stuff in our newsfeed that you don't need because it's outdated. Right. And then whatever the most precedent, like this one, I made the announcement for today, so that if someone's on that page, that's going to be what they're seeing. Okay. And you know what I mean? If we have a project raising, having that person's explanation of their project possibly being it, and then having our or two under it, right? So people are like, for the week, that's like just picking what is the most pressing and having that be the announcement as well.
Right. Okay. I think, and I mean, this is partially on me because I was on to post it, but we also only talked about posting it yesterday, is maybe figuring out cadence where we're posting more than the day before. Because then that gives the algorithm a chance to show it to a few more people. Because I know I'm constantly seeing posts, of people that I went to high school with. It's like, they posted that 5 days ago and I'm just now seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then because I'm not a tech person, Facebook is where I'm like, I can maybe run a Facebook group and we're figuring out the problems troubleshooting for that. But for the actual, if we're concentrating on the coding of an MVP, I don't necessarily know what you need to be able to do that, because like, how is it different than the Facebook group as far as what do you need to know? Because you create your own algorithm or no algorithm.
Right. Yeah. So a big part of it is just trying to figure out, like, I guess you would start with what problems you're trying to solve, which we sort of started with, and then your next layer down kind of becomes almost how you figured that you're solving them, or like particular features that you think might solve it, right? So an example might be, how are we going to notify people? If you're a member and you're somebody who says, I'm interested in Reason Score and Wiki Election, which I think will end up having to be a feature, some way to indicate an interest in a project. If that project has something going on, how do we want to notify people? Like, is that just an email? Is that a text message? We give people the ability, right? Like, what is the MVP? I would say the MVP is probably just email. And you can technically kind of fake a text message through email as well. But then it becomes, so what do we need? And what is the MVP versus where do we maybe want to end up? Like, it's pretty easy to see if we have a full-fledged app, that's where, okay, maybe it also becomes an app on the phone, and then it starts to come up with notifications on the phone. That's something that probably not MVP, but we'd probably want to end up there.
Yeah, I think that notification of what is going on actually is MVP. Is like, because Facebook group is you know what I mean? But it's like, how do we get people to know if we're not messaging everybody, if we're not doing things within Facebook and it's email and text message, and people to opt in to say, yes, when I have things in this category, I want to know about it, right? Maybe you only want to know about the things in education or in reason, sense making, right? Like maybe, and figuring out that piece of it. Like how do we get that permission from people, and how do we get their text message? And then if we have their text message and email, how do we actually send out those notifications? Because that's not my strong suit. Right.
Yeah, and the how to do it, we don't have to worry about that yet. Like, aside from let's do it through email, because the other ways are a bit too difficult. Which even that's not necessarily a part of the actual like MVP design. That's just me guessing what we'll end up having to do.
All right.
so some form of notification and a way for members to like choose what they're notified on. I think that makes sense as sort of a baseline. It has to have that, or why are we even doing this? If you have to go check it every day to see what's new, that's not very good.
Yeah, and then
So is the need that this is fulfilling is that in our projects we want more participation? What's the core need that we're designing for?
In my mind, the core need is to sort of help get projects off the ground and help them get the help that the projects need. Yeah. So it's like, which might be a good place to start, because the notifications are more for the helpers, I guess you might call them, as opposed to like the project owners. And so like for a project owner, what do they need? What's sort of the bare minimum? For example, to explain your project, there's going to have to be some sort of a profile to say, here's what Reason Score is. Are you interested? You'll have to give some sort of an intro.
It's just, I guess I don't think we have a really good phrasing, and I think we're jumping down the design path when we're not sure. I don't have a clear understanding that that's the most pressing need. So that's what we've talked about in the past, and that's how we kind of envision this product, but I think we're doing it out of order. So what's the main thing that our individual projects need that we want to fulfill? If that's getting other participants, then fine, let's talk about notifications. But if we all need marketing, then maybe we could take a marketing course together and we could post that on GameB Projects and do that as a group through Facebook. I mean, I don't have a clear understanding of what we're trying to solve. We're still talking solutions, but we don't have the problem outlined.
Right. So I guess the main problem that I struggle with in projects is just what I call the skill gap, right? So like I've got certain skills when it comes, like I've got a history in product management, so that in theory means I've got a certain skill set. But for example, I'm not a developer. So anything to do with, like the specs that they had written will end up having to be, gone over with an actual developer and then built out and tested. I'm also, not good at marketing. So if somebody's good at marketing, and while I'm open to doing things like taking courses, I also don't think that everyone will want to sort of have every skill set necessary. And so it's to be able to sort of, I guess, list the things that I would need help with, or that my project would need help with. And then the end goal is to have a list of people who want to help with projects, might have an idea of, I want to help with projects and I'm good at marketing. So I'm going to tell the system what I'm interested in, and then I'm good at marketing. And it says, you said that you like, sense making and marketing. Here's 2 sense making projects that need marketing help.
So would it be fair to say that your biggest need right now is volunteers with specific skill sets?
Yeah. Now, I will say that's sort of the biggest thing that that I need help with, that also I think this can reasonably solve in the near future. I think an obvious thing that a lot of projects need is money, where, the end goal of this might end up being something like a Patreon for projects like this. A couple of people have talked about that. I think, got at least one project that's sort of talking about maybe starting that. But in my mind, that, if you had something like, I think most of us are thinking of TogetherTec as, we have some different ideas as to like what features might end up being there, but the end idea of helping projects sort of fill a need, that's everything from just building your audience of people who want to know what you're up to building, an army of volunteers who can actually help build it and create it, to having audience of volunteers or whatever group it is, actually starting to contribute either a one-time or a monthly payment like on Patreon. And again, that last thing, I don't think that we'd want to try to tackle yet.
So Adriel's biggest need is volunteers with specific skill sets. But Jubilee, I think yours is different, right?
Yeah, mine's participation. So any volunteer who wants to be part of an online video conversation, and then if they're higher than that, Also, I would love to record them and put them online. So people are more willing to do that, and but just participation and people knowing when there is something they can participate in, and especially if that can be, so I guess it's more marketing. It's like if they can know when something that's more like if it's within their time schedule and it's within their area of interest, right? What does that work for them? Because there's people who would participate in any solution raising as long as it's on their schedule. There's other people who will make the time in their schedule for a specific topic and figuring that piece out. But I kind of think that what we're doing right now, which is a project raising on TogetherTec, what I want to do is offer a solution raising on projects. Is like, what do we currently do when you have an idea to get into the world? What would our deal look like? And then what is something we could do with 10,000 people and $100,000? But that's not what we need to do during this period. But I'm just putting it out there that is what I'm sparking, is like, doesn't matter if you have a project or not. If you did, how would you get into the world, and creating a solution, raising on that.
Okay.
How about you, Bentley?
I think for me, I just need time. So if I was going to need anything right at the moment, it would be another developer to do code reviews and pair programming with on the topic, right, and kind of review things or speed up with some of the simpler stuff that's not the core logic of the system, which, you know, everyone can use more software developers these days. So yeah. I'm not going to hold back. After that, then it will be a community organizer would be ideal. So I guess it does come down to people, which of course you can either get through volunteers or through funding. So yeah, I mean those are the things we keep talking about. But I think it's good to know specifically, like, Jubilee's need is a little different from ours because we need specific skill sets.
I think it is, but I think one leads to the other. Like, I think you don't get a volunteer without building an audience first, because I don't think people are going to, like, just show up and be like, I'm going to do work for Reason Score, unless they know what Reason Score is, they've been following it for a while, they're interested, and they say, oh, they need coders, I'm a coder, right? Or like if you're following the projects and just sort of loosely being, oh, well, what's going on over there? Oh, they want people to go on camera to talk about education? That sounds cool.
Well, I think you can build a broad audience, then try and pull people out of it. But I think there are also ways to specifically seek out people of a certain type and focusing your efforts on those people.
Right, yeah. I think that's sort of like broad marketing versus like guerrilla marketing, where it's the end goal is to get people on board, and whether it's, you know, you just put an ad on Facebook or you went to like a local GameB group and got people to sign up. Yeah. At the end of the day, especially, you know, for like the first 100 users for the MVP, it's probably mostly going to be the one-on-one. It's going to be going out to Facebook groups, you know, and YouTube videos and leaving comments and inviting people, and both, you know, the project owners and the volunteers. And the thing that I think I wasn't necessarily thinking was MVP, but now that I've heard both of you talk, it sounds like it definitely is the ability to say what you're interested in, like things like sense making, and then on projects, say, like to categorize them, so that as an audience member, you can just say, I'm interested, you know, in this area, and then any new projects that come on, we can also say, oh, by the way, you said that you were interested in sense making, and we have 2 new sense making projects if you want to check those out. So that's sort of one level of notification that's not specifically project-based. Like, it's not like saying, hey, Reason Score has a new video that you should check out, but kind of like one of the earliest, most important parts of it is just the sort of matching people up. Is saying, you said that you were, you know, a volunteer, you got these skills, which that part might even be sort of like, I think it's MVP, but not like earliest version. Where at first it would just be, here, you know, I want to sign up as either a member or a project person. But the project says what categories that they fit into, and then the volunteer says what categories they're interested in, and then to build a list to say, hey, here's stuff you said that you might be interested in. and whether you're already following it or not.
Maybe we could do, remember when we did for the projects, we put out a survey that then got made into a spreadsheet on that same thing, but instead of on your project, on you, right? What are you interested in, with a multiple choice options, so that we, sense making, food, education, things that are more categorizing. And then also, like, because if there's a way to contact people whenever there's a new sense making thing, right? Maybe they've heard of WikiLection, they're interested in everything WikiLection does, but then you already have that contact, so you can contact them directly. But any time there's a new one, they want to be talked about. Anyway, so sorry, what they're interested in as well as what their skills are, right? Could you do coding, right? Like, or is it just anyone who's interested in sense making? You want to be able to poll 1,000 people. Like, how do we grow our pool of participants for all of them, right? Whether you have a project or not, and then how do we focus so that we can notify them when there's a event going on, or when you're a project holder, if you have a specific request of them, right? Like, you can send out to people who are interested in sense making and they have the skill of coding. You can send out an email saying, hey, we're looking for someone to put in 4 hours to look over this code, right? It needs to be volunteer. And you're more, it's going to be targeted marketing then, right? It's going to be the people who have the skills and have that, and the more we're able to build that base and not piss them off, right? Not send them everything every time, but we're trying to focus it and listening to that feedback as well of, oops, we've sent you too many in the last while, right? Like, how do we build that base for all of our projects and hone it in a way where we're sending the right requests and information to the right people?
Right.
So one option for that might be to use something like MailChimp, which has a fairly large free level, and then you can ask questions when they sign up, and then send out emails based upon their answers. And I think they have a multiple choice or checkboxes or something in there.
Yeah.
So that's one option. There might be competitors that would do the same thing.
Something that's also, this is where it would be great if there was more than 3 of us participating with our projects, right? Because then we know more of what people need and more of what, but and creating it in a way where any of us can tweet it or put it on Facebook, where we're building the audience, we're building that group of people, right? It doesn't matter whether they're my high school friend or your cousin, or like, it's like, are you interested in knowing what is it, like, to have more concentrated marketing on things that can actually.
So that's interesting. So what I think I'm hearing from that is whatever content goes in there. So let's say like Bentley comes out with a new, a write-up on Reason Score or a video or some kind of content that he says, great, I want to share this with people to get some interest. In this case, he might, either upload it or like somehow put it on TogetherTec. It's now, at least part of it is public. So he can then take that link, put it on Facebook and say, hey, Reason Score just released a new video. People who click on that link will be taken to some sort of like a public facing, hey, here's the content that Reason Score just shared. You can, you can read it, you can watch the video, do whatever, but it's within TogetherTec. So at that point, the person can, if they want, they could go and like, oh, I want to go take a look at the Reason Score profile and see what that project is up to. And you can go and see, a recent timeline and all the stuff there, with the end goal being, somebody says, oh, this is cool. I like this. I like TogetherTec. I want to sign up on TogetherTec so that I can follow Reason Score.
Yeah, possibly. It's building that base audience for, whether it's TogetherTec bringing it in or solution raising, bringing it in, as long as the person is interested, they're going to want to know about what they're interested in. As long as they have their skill set, we're going to want to pair them with where they want to go. So anytime anyone's brought in, that they're part of a bigger group of people, I don't know what the word is, like group of people to pick from, right? But I don't want to send out every video I do to 10,000 people and annoy them. I want it to be more focused. But that pool is the word I'm looking for, that pool of potential watchers, the pool of potential participants, and as well as volunteers, having them opt into that to say, here's what I actually want to know about. Here's what I want to participate in. Maybe they don't want to participate on camera. So there's other things that I could put out, you know what I mean? Like, the more we can get that information from them in a survey, the more we can hone how do we all use that pool and have people opt in, so that all of the project all the projects in GameB Projects and TogetherTec can benefit from that pool of people without pissing off that pool of people.
Right. Yeah. I think like cadence wise, I think it would be up to the project owners, so we'll probably have some guidelines like, hey, maybe don't send more than 2 or 3 messages a week, like just in general. And then for the actual, like for TogetherTec doing the, hey, stuff you might be interested in, I think to start with, we would just do that once a week. Like, once we actually have enough content, we say, hey, here, we had 10 new projects last week, 3 of them aligned with your interests. Here's what those 3 projects are.
The way I'd envision it, if they want to follow a specific project, then I would almost want that project to have, except to Jubilee's point of directing people to the central TogetherTec to get more info on all the projects. It might be good to have those be separate email lists or whatever the thing is. I guess it depends on whether we're doing an MVP with existing tech or if we're creating our own tech.
Yeah, the current goal is to be creating our own tech because it's like I'm actually going to be hiring a coder and then
No, I think the current goal is to get the need filled, and I don't think if we could do it with MailChimp, why not do it with MailChimp for free?
Yeah, if it can meet all of the bits and pieces.
Well, not everything, just the MVP.
So
right,
I'm wondering.
The V is important in MVP, right? Just an email. Well, we can do that now.
Well, no, but a way where you can show interest in different topics and then get notifications when when something new happens under that topic, that is doable in MailChimp today for free. Yeah, for less than 12,000 emails a month.
Right. I just think that you would have to have a lot more on top of that in order to actually drive people to there. Personally, if
so that is the
content and survey and.
But we can also, so what we could do in MailChimp to make it an MVP is to have a newsletter and have it be something that is both powerful for the projects that they want to update. So having something that has a regular, template, where it's like, here's all the projects that are involved, right? Click here to go and get your update if that's something of interest. Right. And here's here's all the new projects, and have them categorized so that your guys is under sense making and these ones are under, and then also potentially, I don't know whether to be a weekly or monthly newsletter because things happen really rapidly, but here's what's going on here's this calendar of events going on in the next month, right? Of if you want to participate in Reason Score, here's what's going on in Wiki Election, here's what's going on. And but it's one newsletter, right? So it's going to go out without that codified. But the newsletter itself is generated in a way that breaks it down to your interests, right? We're not going to care about the non-education ones, right? Or if you're only into education, but to see and then it's also generating. People are signing up for the newsletter. People with projects can send out that newsletter to their people to bring them onto the newsletter, and it's building that pool of people.
I guess I don't see what the value of having a regular repeating newsletter. The goal is that we can send people someplace. So we could say, hey, if you're interested in helping out projects and you have any of these skill sets or any of these interests, go to this link and fill it in, and you will get an email when something happens. I think that's good as far as a minimum viable project, or that I don't think there's much. I mean, that I don't see why we'd add the extra complexity of having a regular newsletter.
Fair enough. I was just it kind of fulfills the need for just MailChimp to have that extra layer of here's having it in sections where it's if you want to follow your favorite project, here's all the projects that are involved. Maybe that's at the very end because it is the thing that would be generating constantly. But also here, if you're a coder, here's what we need, right? Here's where we need volunteers. Here's where we need skill set. And so it would go out to people who, but the more we can hone that so that it's not one newsletter that goes out to everyone the same. The idea is that we don't have a pool of people yet. So to create that pool of people, it's a more generalized newsletter that is look at all these projects and how they're involved. Right. And
I'll say I agree with Bentley in that to me newsletters don't make sense simply because email sucks. People open up maybe 1% of emails that they receive. Even if you sign up and want to see it, it very likely gets lost amongst the which even like to have email notifications for it, that's more like in hoping that there's going to be a couple of them and you have a higher chance to see one. I think that becomes like a small sliver, and then we talk about ways to improve it. And well, I think that if we can do this with a collection of tools, that's a good starting point. Personally, the goal here is to actually come up with the minimum viable product, with something that's actually built, and it's not pretty. It's not, it probably doesn't even have 5% of the features that it will end up with, but it's just saying like what's actually interesting and easy enough that we could possibly do this, like drop the specs, and my eventual goal is to pay out of pocket for actually a coder to come and code this. What does that coded app look like? And then for things like, it might just be, using an API to talk to MailChimp or someone, so we don't have to reinvent the email wheel. That's fine. But so I guess my thing is, well, what does that product have to look like so that we as project owners would actually want to sign up, and we as people who are interested in helping other projects, that part appeals to us as well. Because if we only have one, I guess technically we could just start out with projects and almost sort of make it like a project directory. But I'm not sure why projects would come on board if there isn't that flip side of, oh, and by the way, the end goal of this is that you get help with your project.
I think if we have people that are interested in projects and we're telling people projects will come on board, I don't think finding the projects is the challenging bit. I think the hard part's finding the volunteers. And you were kind of saying that email sucks, but I think all of the solutions we've been discussing were email. So I don't know what you're proposing outside of email.
So I'm saying like email becomes one prong, as it were, right? So I'm not saying don't do email. I'm just saying don't put a lot of work into making email work as a system, knowing that like I've signed up for newsletters and then, opened them once or twice and then just lost interest for a while. And now I see that same newsletter popping up that I might open once a month. Now, the one I'm thinking of is a daily newsletter, which we weren't talking about, but still.
Well, yeah, but if you're only getting an email when something new happens and it's not a recurring thing, which has other risks, then you're more likely to open it up, I think. Unless you forget.
I think it depends on the person, right? Like, just if you email too often, you're likely to get unsubscribed for sure. If you
well, they'll forget about that they signed up for the email is the biggest risk. Yeah. I mean, they do talk about keeping email lists warm and stuff, but there's a risk both ways with this sort of thing. But if our goal is just to have a notification system that we can, a place where we could have a list of people that have interest in their skills, that then we can notify them when either new projects come about or, a project significantly changes or has a new need, then I think we can do that. But that's different from having a project directory.
Yeah.
That's a different feature set.
The thing that I do like about that is like the way that I am planning, and I think for Wiki Election, there's no way around this. For TogetherTec, it might be possible, is I really don't want to give people another freaking login. Like that part to me is like, I just really, if people have to remember another login or another password, that's just another period entry. That is something I do like about that system, about like just using MailChimp in a survey, is as long as you can just say, here's my email, and then it says, great, what do you want us to sign up for? It's very low friction as far as getting people to sign up and manage their account. I do like that about it.
Can we not use the Facebook and Google logins? I know they're not ideal for when we bankrupt Facebook and Google, but like that's to me, people are like, well, why? Considering we're trying to create a like technology cooperative that outcompetes them all. Why are you trying to use them? Like, because that's where the people are, and that's the problem with Discord is they don't have that, and so it's a new login every time that somebody sends you a link to do it. It doesn't really realize that I'm the same person that wanted to sign up for the cooperatives as GameB as this and so great from that. But I feel like creating an MVP that's not just an email list, like that's something that is doable, and we could generate something else. But if we're actually coding something outside of Facebook and Google and those is we don't have the people. And so creating something is expensive and time consuming when we don't have the people to say, here's what I want out of it, and here's what this is, which we might be able to generate more of that by doing, or at least solutions that are generative through a project raising on it. But all of it is going to come down to, how do we actually get 10,000 people, right? Like, how do we, or 1,000 or 100, a number, right? Like, how do we actually create something that people want to come to? Because I don't really want to sign up for another email list, right? I'm not like, oh, another email list.
Wait.
Whereas something like a Patreon that's actually designed around projects, where I can be like, people can request things of me and I can do surveys and things that sounds much more fun. But then it's not MVP, right? Like, then it's like, okay, well, and so that's where, to me, the 10,000 people and $100,000 is to me where I'm focusing my energy. Because it's like, and that's what I'm excited about, because that's what I've been sitting with this week, is looking through the solution raisings. And like, now that we have several of them, I want to do one more on labor, and then I want to do one on solution raising. Right. Which means, how do we actually get 10,000 people, right? And how do we work with 10,000 people, and how do we do that?
So I think that's an interesting part and this is where building MVPs is always interesting, because there's it's such a nebulous term for a lot of people. I think the M and the V are in stark contrast with each other, where you want to make it as minimum as possible, but it has to be viable. So if you have a tool but nobody would use it, it's not viable. They're like, great, you have an app, it sucks, thanks for building that helped no one. But if you build it over the top and you're like, great, that's too much and the features don't make sense, you didn't get feedback early on enough. So what does it look like for us to actually say, and any of these projects are going to have that really weird, uncomfortable time where if you build something, you're not going to start up with users. And even if you have an email list, and then you have 1,000 people and you build an app and say, hey, everyone, we just built an app, go and sign up. A lot of them probably won't, partially because they didn't see the email, or they just don't want to create another login, whatever that reason is. There's going to be that process where you again have to get people to now sign up on the app. So if we have a sort of a stepping stone of like using a survey to build a list of people who, here's your interest and here's your skill set. If we can find a way to make that viable, I like it, because it's fast and we can do that now without having to code something. But I think for the actual the minimum viable product, where it's not somebody else's product, is sort of the first stepping stone of TogetherTec itself, like the actual building up the product. What does that look like? Does that make sense?
So you're asking, what is the first, when we actually do write code, what's it look like? Is that your question?
Right, like if we have some sort of an app on TogetherTec.com that's trying to, I think we can all sort of agree, we're trying to, there's going to be some sort of a profile for the projects, and then some sort of a way to sort of build an audience, and from that audience, hopefully get some volunteers and start to, so you can sort of do both sides for projects. You can get help, and you can, speak to your audience and start to build that somewhere outside of the areas that there's not really a good spot for it now. You can do it on Facebook, but meh.
I think that for me, what's coming up is the minimal viable product would be just that, having a place where I could say, hey, I'm Jubilee, here's where you can go to get more information on me. I'm, trying to create solution raising in the world. It's minimal viable product right now, right? Which is a Facebook group. And here you can follow my update videos, right?
Okay.
That I'm doing monthly on our Facebook page. If you want, you can join our Facebook page and creating a way that then as people, and then a way for people to sign up to say, hey, I want to keep updated on TogetherTec. I want to keep updated on solution raising. I want to keep updated on reason score, so that if I have something new, I can send it out to them. Right.
So I don't think it's what you said, but it's something that I sort of heard in the beginning of it, where I think we've all sort of talked about the concept of, of course, we're going to be tracking projects, and there's going to be some capacity for members to follow a project. But if you think about, so for example, somebody like Jubilee, who's a part of project raisings, who's a part of solution raisings, who joins all these other sessions, or somebody like me or Bentley, where we have wiki election and reason score, then we're also a part of TogetherTec. You have a page for the profile, but you also have a page for the person, and you can follow either. Like, so if somebody says Jubilee's smart, she, has insight in a whole broad range of topics. I'm interested to see anything that she does. And so even if like I do a video on Wiki Election and Jubilee's a part of it, somebody might get alerted just because of that, just because Jubilee's a part of it, and they are following her as like, a person as opposed to a certain project where that you also have to be able to follow.
Like that. Sorry, Bentley, go. I'll write my notes now. Go.
What's the value of putting that in this app rather than using what's already out there? I mean, if people want to see everything that Jubilee does, they can follow her on Twitter.
Does she post everything on Twitter though? Like,
well, that's up to her. I'm just saying, why are we reinventing social media?
Is a part to store the content, because right now, if she wants to if she wants to write a blog post, where is she putting that?
Well, on Medium, on the 100 blog posting systems that are out there.
So then that's purely for content, and then here's the website, here's the Twitter, here's all these different channels. It's sort of meant to be as much as it can be, which is a long way down the road until it's actually that useful. Sort of a one-stop shop. Like you put your content here, where the idea is to build your audience here. Sort of like it's almost like a pre-Patreon, where it's like you're starting to build your audience. It's going to end up being, we want to build a feature where your audience can choose to support you here for this specific thing, for like a very purpose-driven Patreon. And then it's for storing your content. It's for sort of being able to have, here's your one spot where you've got your profile, you've got this. It's hopefully going to end up helping to fund your project. And then you would go out onto Facebook, onto Twitter, onto your website, onto Medium, onto all of these places where you're trying to funnel them in that direction. Like, I'm not sure how many channels you have, Bentley. I know I have a challenge in Wiki Election of trying to figure out like where to put stuff. And I've got channels on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Patreon. I don't use all of them. I just sort of reserved them so that I can use them at some point, but there's still where does this go? Where do I put this? And if it's a YouTube video, it's easy. But for a lot of other things, like I don't really want it on the website. I could, but then I have to go and like get a WordPress plugin to have a blog, and I don't really care if that's on the website.
I like the idea because it does help us build that audience with, like Bentley said too, that we are a little bit reinventing the wheel, but it's because of this, like there are, blockchain people that are trying to solve this, where like you post it one place and you can decide where it is, but that's not really like our main audience, right? Our 10,000 people that hopefully grows from there is that I am all over the place. So I'm on, some of this content isn't available because it's unlisted, but some of the content maybe I could make for my subscribers, right? Make like the stuff on Liberate Mankind's YouTube channel, which is our Omega group stuff. But if I go to a podcast and then it links back, right? If Jordan Hall talks to many people, and we can follow, you can see where all of the places Jordan Hall has been, and then you can connect that. For if you want to follow the person, you can see all of their content, but you're also bringing people into the pool. Like if I'm just like somehow, because I've had a conversation with Jordan Hall and people are find that, then it brings an audience to me, which means then that because I'm here, I bring an audience to you guys, right? Like, it's like, if people, you know what I mean? Like Jordan Hall's gonna have a much bigger audience than I am, of course. Not everyone who wants Jordan Hall and sees our interview is going to like, yes, I want to follow Jubilee. But then when I'm on something that isn't even part of TogetherTec, isn't even part of ours, it draws in their audience a bit more. And especially if they know they're like, oh, I didn't know I could, Joe Rogan's not going to sign up for it, but like, the other little places, or maybe he will because he wants to help other projects, right? To say, hey, where do we find out about good ideas that are there, and how do we share in that? Like Twitter's not there to help us share in our audience, right? You have to pay to grow your audience. You have to pay to. I can't just follow all the GameB people easily. I can't just upload content and say, hey, this is just me ranting about WestJet. Don't worry about it. This is nothing to do with like me and my bigger vision of the world. But a lot of this content is, and most of the content is. But this idea cafe on autism isn't, right? It's like, but if you want to follow, and that piece, like not just me, but maybe you want to follow my autistic journey, or maybe you want to follow because I've had brain damage, or, like breaking people down. But it's like actually being able to find, then I can find all of the times we've talked about trust, right? Not just Jubilee, but I want to follow trust. Like there's so many ways to categorize this that is like the data pool that as a user I can get more access to, and then all the things we can build off of that isn't, and it is a fairly minimal viable product, right? Where it's like just a profile, and like it doesn't start with all of that. It's just person and project, and here's all the places where I have been.
Right, and there's sort of like a spot to store the content. We're saying they're talking about that project. There's these three people, but it's just like, here's the content, here's who's involved. There's a fair amount of back end to it, but the front end is just you're tracking projects, you're tracking people, and then like how they interrelate and the content that gets created.
I guess the risks I see with that is now it's another channel I have to maintain, because I'm not going to have that as my
Very
home,
true.
because
Yeah.
I think having everyone's content sourced out of a single place is risky. Um, so and you know, I like the idea of having a place where we can build off each other's audiences, but I didn't see how having a place for us to store content does that. Those are two separate things, and that they're not directly, one
True.
doesn't
The
actually
content
lead
thing,
into
it
the
might
other.
not be MVP. I think
Yeah.
we want it at some point, but I agree it's not necessarily MVP. It's not, we could theoretically, but so like which I think it took us a while to get here, but it's good. What is that? So if we're saying that they're following a person and their content, and that maybe that's not MVP. I think it's cool, but yeah, maybe. But so MVP guaranteed you have to have a project page, or what else is it? It really is just trying to be Facebook at that point. It's just like, and there's nothing to do. You just sign up for a profile and have nothing to do. So I think there's members, there's projects. You can follow a project. There's I think that there was something that I think you had said, Bentley, where you were sort of like getting around to, if you can post it on Twitter, and you would need some way to say, like, here's a public facing side, so I can put a link on Twitter and on these other channels to say, hey, go check out this video or blog post or whatever. Now, that sort of leads back into that. Is that part the minimum viable? If we just have a project page and people following a project, but there's no capacity for like the project to provide updates, is that useful?
Well, okay. Yeah, let's take even a step further back. So, like, we figured out that it'd be nice to be notified when something happens within your interest area and
Right.
in a skill set that you have. And then now we're saying we would like to have a place that when someone first goes there, they can kind of see a live result of that same search, like what's happened in the past without the notifications.
Right.
Is really the main thing, right?
Yeah.
So you want to go and say, here's what I'm interested in, and here's my skill set. What in the past has happened, and so a MailChimp solution wouldn't solve that. I can't think of any way using the existing technology.
Right.
And then
it should be like, here's the last 5 newsletters we've sent out in case you're interested.
Well, I mean, here's the last. It would be, here's the last, or the complete history of everything that matches what you selected.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So
so that's a feature we don't have.
Okay. Yeah. That history. And that's something that, just because of how this is being built, we'll end up being able to do that part of it. I mean, if we can't, then the whole thing is sunk anyway. But that's one of the main things. I'm interested to think what you think, either from the project side or like a volunteer side, that relationship between person and project, not the project owner, just either somebody who's interested in or wants to volunteer. What's sort of the smallish thing that we could do that would actually be interesting? Because I think it is important to realize we are reinventing the wheel. We're just sort of adding 1 or 2 extra spokes to put a special spin on it. But effectively, yeah, this is kind of like trying to reinvent Facebook / Patreon / some other stuff. Really, it's very Patreon-esque at its core. There's just a bunch of extra stuff on top at some point. And to start out with, there won't be a payment thing because that really complicates it. But in my mind, we're building towards that point. Like, that's sort of one of the endpoints, is having it be that ecosystem, that Patreon-esque, but where instead of it being like a creator of like entertainment, which typically, in my experience, is what Patreon is for, this is specifically around like GameB Projects. So what does that need?
I mean, I guess my philosophy on going forward would be that we identify the most important need and try and solve that need rather than having this target goal. Because I think our target is, I kind of disagree with that. We're creating a Patreon for projects.
What would you
I'd-
add or take out?
I would
from that?
rather not have that destination so we can find it on our path there. So I'd rather go agile rather than waterfall, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right, but even
So,
in,
again-
in Agile, the project has an end purpose.
A purpose, not a feature set. You're listing a feature set, not a purpose.
True, but even in
And our
Agile, you typically
purpose-
have a roadmap, and
No.
roadmaps do contain,
No.
like, we'll try to do these. The
Roadmaps are very, very, very loose. The looser the better, the less of a roadmap the better. A roadmap is just because businesses need it, not because Agile needs it. So at any time that we're saying, oh, we're heading towards this goal, that is something that I am cautious about and want to bump against. Is that we need to say what's our next need.
Possibly, we only have like 4 minutes, but like,
Right.
what is the difference between a purpose and a goal?
Well, no, I was saying the difference between a purpose and a goal and a feature.
Right.
We're listing actual features, and
Ah,
I'd rather
so
say
purpose is
this
kind
is
of a goal.
Crowdfunding is
This-
a feature. Our purpose is to sort of help projects and help drive that forward.
Okay.
You could technically do
So I
that without
think-
funding.
or a need.
I think what we actually want, just like the 10,000 and 100,000 is what I want for solution raising, is, and we want at least a dozen people who have projects that are similar and not similar, who can come together and say, what do we want in our version of Patreon or whatever that looks like, right? Like, how do we find people and have these same conversations that are generative? But like, that is actually our MVP, is we need to be able to have a, what does that look like? And right now it looks like us live on video, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe people really aren't comfortable with that. So doing the Facebook page and saying, bump this up, make this your number one notification if that resonates with you. And then also, what does getting together weekly look like, right? Like, does it look like an hour on Saturday mornings? What would that like, what is it going on Zoom and then breaking off into groups that are appropriate to yours? Like, what do you want in an MVP? But then also having just that discussion, like just how do we bring people to one of those conversations so we can be a dozen people having that conversation who has projects. So a doodle poll on times for the first conversation? I don't know.
I agree with all that. I did want to point out that that's, in the last several minutes, is completely different from what we've discussed for the last hour. But
I'm totally aware of that.
but it's good to reset. I mean, yeah, maybe the thing is we need more than 3 people before we jump down building anything. But
Yeah, and I think we do. And we have 50 people in projects, and I guarantee you there are at least a dozen projects in that, if not 20 or 30. And so finding a time for 12 of those to meet shouldn't be that difficult, especially right now when we're all on lockdown, right? Like, maybe you couldn't make Tuesday morning at 10 a.m., but right now you could put off whatever you're doing online for that time and actually meet and extend your workday longer, right? Like, people have more ability to do those type of things right now. So if we put out a doodle poll for, when would you actually come and be part of a Zoom conversation that is recorded but not live, and generate what is the thing that's stopping your project? What would an MVP look like? And we could maybe hash out a little more of what that looks like for us, right? What does that meeting look like? What kind of questions do we want to answer so that we have that purpose? What is the purpose? And then how do we actually create an MVP for that?
I think that's perfect.
All right. It's like,
Problem
it took us an
solved.
hour to get there, which I love. It's like, and then we're, okay. How does that resonate with you, Adriel?
I was kind of spaced out for the last.
That's all right. That's fair. I can't even reiterate it. I'll have to rewatch it. But
Yeah,
like,
fine. I can rewatch it.
creating a
Yeah.
conversation with more than the 3 of us,
Yeah.
and how do we
Yeah.
actually do that? Because we keep trying and it keeps not happening.
That's fine.
So like,
Basically, we want to
And
step back and
probably-
do the same thing with more people.
Yeah, and I'll probably abandon the idea of doing trying to reuse the same code stream. That was kind of a part of it. Was there's a lot of similarities between the 2 projects, at least at the base level. But if it's not there yet, if we don't think that we're doing that, then that's fine. We can cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah.
all right. So I think what I'll do is I'll put out a doodle poll with several times on it for our group We can also do, I think what I said about the algorithm, like changing your notifications so this one's up there because we need to move fast on projects and we need you to see them. And then doodle poll for a time, and then we can put that out to the bigger GameB community and even on Twitter and stuff as well, right? Do you have a project you want to move forward that maybe not meets this criteria, improves the world literally in any way? Come be part of having a conversation on how we generate those projects.
Yeah, and also ask them if they're not going to participate, why, or what could we do to have them participate?
Yeah,
Might
like
be
is
a
it
good
just a scheduling thing, or is it
Yeah.
because it's Zoom? Is it? Yeah, I like that too. Why not? Yes, no. All right, I might not be able to do that this right away because I'm trying to solve all of the world's problems within the on vacation, all of this stuff. But it also might happen within the next week as I'm trying to sequester myself away from loud family. What a great time to do this. All right, should we say goodbye to YouTube and Facebook? All right, thanks everybody.